Krishna Krishna.
Hare Hare.
Jai Maharaj. Obeisances to you. Hare Krishna.
Jai Chaitanya Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jayadvaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajakacharya Ashtotar Satashri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Navadip Dham ki jai, Ganga Mayi ki jai, Jamuna Mayi ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Tulsi Devi ki jai, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. So welcome everyone for Sri Caitanya Caritamrta class with His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami and friends. It is Thursday, March 28th, 2024 in New York. And tonight, according to my notes and Maharaj's notes, we're starting with Caitanya Caritamrta, Adi Lila, chapter 7, text number 133. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is addressing the Mayavadi sannyasis of Benares. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Emata Pratisutre Sahajarta Chadiya. Gaunarta Vyakya Kare Kalpana Kariya. To prove their philosophy, the members of the Mayavada school have given up the real, easily understood meaning of the Vedic literature and introduced indirect meanings based on their imaginative powers. Report. Unfortunately, the Shankarite interpretation has covered almost the entire world. Therefore, there is a great need to present the original, easily understood, natural import of the Vedic literature. We have therefore begun by presenting Bhagavad Gita as it is, and we propose to present all the Vedic literature in terms of the direct meaning of its words. Om Jnana Timidantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistang Stapitam Jena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Bandehang Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavams Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitangs Tang Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padang Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitams Cha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Brindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanjakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. In the beginning of the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna plainly asks Krishna which is better, the process of worshiping the impersonal absolute or the personal form of the absolute. And just now is reading all these verses, how Krishna is saying it's just so much harder. It's very difficult for the embodied to fix their minds on anything impersonal because we're all persons. And it just makes more sense from Krishna's point of view and from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's point of view and from anyone's point of view. It's unreasonable to adopt another process when the direct mukhya vritti, taking things at face value process, is presented so clearly. And Prabhupada here is saying of himself, we have therefore begun by presenting Bhagavad Gita as it is, in terms of the direct meaning of its words. It's become very fashionable to interpret things indirectly and to speculate like crazy, because people that speculate really, really well, they win awards and grants and teaching positions and things like that. But we're not after that. We're after faithful following of the acharyas of Krishna, because from that we actually derive the benefit from all of this. But anyway, there's so much that can be said. Maharaj, we're happy to hear from you if you'd have something to say on this. Hare Krishna.
Om Jnana Timirantasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave. Again, we have Mukhya, Vritti, and Gona, Mukhya Artha and Gona Artha, the direct meaning and the indirect meaning. So the accusation is here, or the statement is here, that the, excuse me, the Mayavadis avoid the direct meaning, and they kalpana, they imagine something, they concoct something. That's their approach. And their speculations have been influential everywhere in the world. And it's hard to trace exactly how that's happened, but we see that all over the world, this idea that everything is one, that the absolute is impersonal, and so on, is current. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Jai Maharaj, thank you very much. Panchatattva Prabhu, we have a string of verses without purports. Would you like to read some of them or even all of them in your sonorous voice?
I'd be delighted to read them in my sylvan voice. Remember that? Hare Krishna. Text 134. Emate pratisutre karena dushan shuni chamatkar haila sannyasi ragan. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu thus showed for each and every sutra the defects in Sankaracharya's explanations, all the assembled Mayavadi sannyasis were struck with wonder. Sakala sannyasi kahe shunaha shripad tumije kandile arta e nahe vivad. All the Mayavadi sannyasis said, Your Holiness, kindly show from us that we actually have, Your Holiness, kindly know from us that we actually have no quarrel with your refutation of these meanings, for you have given a clear understanding of the sutras. Acharya kalpita artha iha sabe jani sampradaya anurodhe tabutaha mani. We know that all this word jugglery springs from the imagination of Sankaracharya, and yet because we belong to his sect, we accept it, although it does not satisfy us. Mukyarta vyakyakara deki tomar bala mukyarte la gala prabhu sutra sakala. Now let us see, the Mayavadi sannyasis continued, how well you can describe the sutras in terms of their direct meaning. Hearing this, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began his direct explanation of the Vedanta Sutra. Brihadvastu Brahma Kahi Sri Bhagavan Shad Vidhaishvarya Purna Para Tattvadam. Brahman, who is greater than the greatest, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is full in 6 opulences, and therefore he is the reservoir of ultimate truth and absolute knowledge. Purport. In Srimad-Bhagavatam it is said that the absolute truth is understood in 3 phases of realization: the impersonal Brahman, the localized Paramatma, and ultimately the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The impersonal Brahman and localized Paramatma are expansions of the potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is complete in 6 opulences, namely wealth, fame, strength, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. Since he possesses his 6 opulences, the personality of Godhead is the ultimate truth in absolute knowledge. Om Jnana Tmarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshum Nitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So the Mayavadi sannyasis have heard a thorough refutation of Shankaracharya's explanation, his presentation, very partial, incomplete, and so forth, of the Vedas, Vedanta, and of the absolute truth. And now they want to hear more. They want to hear, all right, we've heard it on the negative side. What about the positive side? How do you explain these sutras in terms of their direct meaning? It's kind of interesting. You'd think that the direct meaning would be directly obvious. And maybe I'm hazarding a speculation here, but I think, but it is mentioned by Srila Prabhupada in those very purports that were being referenced earlier by Akendra Prabhu, that this process of trying to understand the Lord via his impersonal feature, it's very difficult. It's a tedious and difficult process, and it makes it actually very hard to understand the absolute truth by his personal feature, because the adherent of the impersonal understanding is so busy negating personality, personal characteristics, and so forth that he or she sees in the material world, that he fails to understand or comprehend that there can be such things as spiritual personality, spiritual variegatedness. It's beyond the pale for him to understand such things. So the Mayavadi sannyasis, although they've heard this thorough refutation, and although they've admitted that Sankaracharya's presentation is based upon Sankaracharya's own imagination, still they want to hear the direct presentation so that they can actually comprehend. I was reading a little ahead, and one of the points that Prabhupada makes is that, in our process, there's sambandha, abhideya, and prayojana. Sambandha is establishing one's relationship with the Supreme Personality of God, understanding what that relationship is of service and so forth. And that's the first step in those 3 steps of God realization. The impersonalists, the Mayavadis, they don't even come to that point. There is no relationship. They understand this absolute truth in terms of just knowledge. They can't understand the absolute in terms of activity. So now Lord Chaitanya is about to give the full mercy to these Mayavadi sannyasis, headed by Prakashananda Saraswati, and bring them to the understanding of a Vaishnava. That we are all eternal servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that's our constitutional position. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Panchatattva Prabhu. Thank you so much. Maharaj, we'd love to hear from you if you'd kindly care to address some of these points.
Good, nothing to add. Well, add something. Brahma means Brihat, the greatest. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will gradually argue that Brahma means Krishna. He's the greatest. That's all.
Jai. Sucharadeva Prabhu, since we're seeing you here, would you like to read a couple of the the next verses, starting with text 139. Is that possible?
Yes, Roji, I'll read. स्वरूप ऐश्वर्य तार नाही माया गंध सकल वेदे रहया भगवान से संबंध. In his original form, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is full with transcendental opulences, which are free from the contamination of the material world. It is to be understood that in all Vedic literature, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ultimate God. तार निर्विशेष कहिए चित शक्ति न मानी अर्ध स्वरूप न मानी ले पूर्णता है हानि. When we speak of the Supreme as impersonal, we deny his spiritual potencies. Logically, if you accept half of the truth, you cannot understand the. If you accept half of the truth, you cannot understand the whole. In the Upanishad, it is said, Om Purnamadah Purnamitam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnam Eva Avashishyate. So this verse, which is mentioned in Ishopanishad, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, and many other Upanishads, indicates that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is full in six opulences. His position is unique, for he possesses all riches, strength, influence, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. Brahman means the greatest, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead is greater than the greatest. Just as the sun globe is greater than the sunshine, which is all pervading in the universe. Although the sunshine that spreads all over the universe appears very great to the less knowledgeable, greater than sunshine is the sun itself, and greater than sun is the sun God. Similarly, impersonal Brahman is not the greatest, although it appears to be. Impersonal Brahman is only the bodily effulgence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but the transcendental form of the Lord is greater than both the impersonal Brahman and the localized Paramatma. Therefore, whenever the word Brahman is used in the Vedic literature, it is understood to refer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord is also addressed as Parabrahman. Mayavadis and others sometimes misunderstand Brahman because every living entity is also Brahman. Therefore, Krishna is referred to as Parabrahman, the Supreme Brahman. In the Vedic literature, therefore, the words Brahman or Parabrahman are used. They are to be understood to refer to Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. This is their real meaning. And since the entire Vedic literature deals with the subject of Brahman, Krishna is therefore the ultimate goal of Vedic understanding. The impersonal Brahmajyoti rests on the personal form of the Lord. Therefore, although the personal effulgence, the Brahmajyoti, is the first realization, one must enter into it, as mentioned in Ishopanishad, to find the Supreme Person, and then one's knowledge is perfect. In the Bhagavad Gita also confirms this Bahunam Janmanamante Jnanvan Mam Prapadyate. One search for absolute truth by dint of speculative knowledge is complete when one comes to the point of understanding Krishna and surrenders unto him. This is the real point of perfectional knowledge. Partial realization of the absolute truth as impersonal Brahman denies the complete opulences of the Lord. This is a hazardous understanding of the absolute truth. Unless one accepts all the features of the absolute truth, namely personal Brahman, localized Paramatma, and ultimately the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one's knowledge is imperfect. Sripad Ramanujacharya in his Vedartha Sangraha says, Jnanena dharma swarupam api niropitam natu jnana matram brahmeti katham idam avagamyate. He thus indicates that the real identity of the absolute truth must be understood in terms of both his knowledge and his characteristics. Simply to understand the absolute truth to be full of knowledge is not sufficient. In the Vedic literature, Mandukya Upanishad, we find the statement Ya Sarvajna Sarvavit, which means that the absolute truth knows everything perfectly. But we also learn from the Vedic description, Parasya Shaktir Vividhaiva Shruyate, that not only does he knows everything, but he also acts accordingly by utilizing his different energies. Thus, to understand that Brahman, the Supreme, is conscious is not sufficient. One must know how he consciously acts through his different energies. Mayavad philosophy simply informs us of the consciousness of the absolute truth, but does not give us information of how he acts in his consciousness. This is the defect of that philosophy.
Some comments, Prabhu? You have anything?
Yeah, we can see how Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Brahmano hi pratishtaham, that he is the source of the impersonal Brahman. And I find it very weird that that although personalists, they don't deny the impersonal aspect of absolute, and they accept both all three, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan as eternal characteristics, as eternal. The Mayavadis, on the contrary, accept only the Brahman to be eternal, although Shastras exclusively mention that both all three of them are eternal. So, and that's what Srila Prabhupada points out, that they choose to be selective in their acceptance of Shastras and Shastric conclusions, and this makes them ineligible for the complete knowledge of the Shastras. And further in the purport, Srila Prabhupada spoke that the Mayavadis simply claim that the Brahman is all knowing, or it is Sat, it is eternal. But that alone is not sufficient, because, as Srila Prabhupada often used to say, that it is not sufficient to know Krishna is God. We should know how Krishna is God. And that's what Srila Prabhupada explains in purpose, that the Brahman is eternal, but we should also know how Brahman is eternal, how Brahman functions, how he interacts with his energies, how the energies manifest the material world. The Mayavadis try to avoid this question by this one word anirvachani, and then they say everything happens, and all this is anirvachani, and therefore it is not a point of discussion. And in this way, they try to avoid they try to avoid the discussion of how Krishna interacts with his energies, and how he maintains and sustains spirituals and material worlds. Uh, on the contrary, devotees, they accept Lord and his multifarious energies, and therefore they are fully capable in explaining Lord and his energies completely and perfectly.
Yeah, thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Maharaj, we'd love to hear from you. Would you like to say something here?
Right. In 139, Swarupa Sharyatar Nahimaya Gandha. In the opulent form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there's not even a whiff, not a hint, not the slightest scent of Maya. The Mayavadis have earned that name because they think that the form of the personality of Godhead is a manifestation of Maya. Anything other than the absolute impersonal, homogeneous truth has to be Maya. There can't be variety in Brahma. So here, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, on the contrary, Nahi Maya Gandha, not even the slightest scent of Maya in the Lord's form. Parasha Shaktir Vividhaiva Shriyate. These Lord's presents everything through his transcendental existence and transcendental energies. Chit Shakti, Tar Nirvisheshakai Chit Shakti Namani. They don't know his transcendental energies. Parampava Majananto Mamputta Mahesha. Okay.
Jai Jai. Thank you so much, Maharaj. Hare Krishna. So now we have text 141. Priyanka Mataji, are you available to read tonight? Text 141.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Jai.
भगवान प्राप्ति हेतु ये करी उपाय श्रवणादि भक्ति कृष्ण प्राप्ति सहाय. It is only by devotional service, beginning with hearing, that one can approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the only means to approach him. Mayavadi philosophers are satisfied simply to understand Brahma to be the sum total of knowledge. But Vaishnava philosophers not only know in detail about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but also how to approach him directly. The method for this is described by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as 9 kinds of devotional service, beginning with hearing. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Pad Sevanam Archanam Vandanam Dasyam Sakyam Atma Nivedanam. Srimad-Bhagavatam 7:523. The 9 kinds of devotional service are hearing about Krishna, chanting about him, remembering him, offering service to his lotus feet, offering him worship in the temple, offering prayers to him, working as his servant, making friendship with him, and unreservedly surrendering to him. One can directly approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead simply by executing these 9 kinds of devotional service, of which hearing about the Lord is the most important, Shravanadi. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has very favorably stressed the importance of this process of hearing. According to his method, if people are simply given a chance to hear about Krishna, certainly they will gradually develop their dormant awareness or love of Godhead. Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte Karai Uday. Love of God is dormant in everyone, and if one is given a chance to hear about the Lord, certainly that love develops. Our Krishna consciousness movement acts on this principle. We simply give people the chance to hear about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and give them prasadam to eat, and the actual result is that all over the world people are responding to this process and becoming pure devotees of Lord Krishna. We have opened hundreds of centers all over the world just to give people in general a chance to hear about Krishna and accept Krishna's prasadam. These two processes can be accepted by anyone, even a child. It doesn't matter whether one is poor or rich, learned or foolish, black or white, old or still a child. Anyone who simply hears about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and takes prasadam is certainly elevated to the transcendental position of devotional service.
Jai, thanks
So
so
day
much.
before yes.
Please
Thank
go
you.
on.
Day before yesterday, we were hearing in Srimad-Bhagavatam class about Rukmini Devi pastime. The context was different, but I am recalling now, reading this verse, that Rukmini Devi also developed love for Krishna after hearing about him from the Brahmana. Without seeing him, she developed love for him by hearing his qualities, his transcendental qualities. Also, Prahlad Maharaj hearing attentively within the womb of his mother from Narada Muni. He developed love for Krishna. He developed the surrender, submission towards his spiritual master simply by hearing. And Srila Prabhupada also used to lay a lot of emphasis on the oral reception. He has used that term multiple times in his books. So, hearing without keeping any reservations with a submissive mood can help us to develop love for Krishna. And I think in yesterday's class, we were also discussing about Kirtan followed by Prasad. That is a philosophy of this Krishna consciousness movement. Maharaj was sharing that how Srila Prabhupada used to say that we should always try to give Krishna to others, try to engage them in Krishna service through by making them hear Kirtan and then distribute the Prasad. Not only Prasad will help, but also Prasad followed by Kirtan. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Jai Mataji, thank you so much. Maharaj, would you like to say anything here?
Yes, as mentioned, Kirtan and Prasad, Kirtan and Prasad. That's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement. For the people in general, Kirtan and Prasad, everyone can chant Hare Krishna. Even if they don't chant, they'll hear. And everyone can accept Prasad. What is the difficulty? So that was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement. That's Prabhupada's movement. Chant Hare Krishna and distribute Prasad, and people will become purified. And along with the Kirtan, some literature, that's also Kirtan. So these three things, some little philosophy and Kirtan Prasad, especially for the, Prabhupada said, more intelligent class of men, philosophy. But otherwise, Kirtan and Prasad, Prabhupada said Chaitanya Mahaprabhu only discuss philosophy with a small number of people. But for the people in general, kirtan and prasad, what more is needed? And as mentioned also, kirtan and prasad together, not just that we give out prasad to the starving masses, dropping it off at orphanages or schools, and patting ourselves on the back, or standing in the floodlights. Yes, we've distributed so many plates of prasad. That's not at all what Prabhupada had in mind. But together, kirtan and prasad, that will uplift people to the spiritual platform. Hare Krishna.
Hi, Morris, thank you. I had a question based on what Prabhupada is saying at the beginning of this purport, and also what the sannyasis of Benares said a little bit earlier. Prabhupada says here that the Mayavadi philosophers are satisfied simply to understand Brahman to be the sum total of all knowledge. But just a few verses previously, we were hearing from the sannyasis themselves that they were not satisfied with the Lakshana of Vritti of Shankaracharya. So how can they be both satisfied and dissatisfied?
Yes, somewhat satisfied. Somewhat satisfied. Those who are very advanced will actually get some satisfaction from impersonal realization. Otherwise, we hear it's basically, well, we subscribe to this doctrine, so we go along with it because, well, what else? But they're still not satisfied. So therefore one has to, what is that? Arurukshur Munir Yogam Karma Karma Uchite Yoga Arudhasyata Seva Shamakarma Uchite. In the beginning, it's work. Any method of spiritual realization is work, and then in the advanced stage, you get some realization. So the Mayavadis, it's mostly work. You know, they're doing meditation, they're chanting mantras, or if they're Buddhists, they're sitting in whatever posture and meditating however they meditate. It's a lot of work, but how much realization, how much transcendental, what's the word? Enlightenment, genuine enlightenment. The Buddhists are particularly good at understanding the, what's the word, tricks of the mind. They're really good at it. They've when you read their stuff, they see all the stuff that the so-called monkey mind does. But they don't have, but what do they have as substance at the end? Just nirvana snuffing out, individuality. It doesn't quite satisfy. Yayatma suprasidati. The soul will be nicely satisfied by Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So their so-called satisfaction is largely due to their, well, Prabhupada would say, poor fund of knowledge. This is all there is, so I guess we'll make the best of it.
Satisfaction, we can say complacency.
Mm-hmm.
Just like Prabhupada says, they are satisfied to remain in whatever it is, material existence, household or life, whatever he's talking about. Satisfied means, anyway, this is what it is, and they're complacent about it.
Right. Right, thank you. Let's see.
Just to note that we shouldn't also be just theoretically satisfied. We have a philosophy, we have some teachings, but we don't feel transcendental inspiration. We have to follow the process seriously so that there'll be actual realization and not just, well, this is what we subscribe to.
Yeah, Sachinandana Maharaj draws a distinction along those same lines by saying there's a difference between just existing and actually living.
Mm. Mm.
Are you existing or you are actually living?
Mm. Nice.
And as we were reading yesterday, the real life is in extending ourselves, extending the mercy to others. That's when we begin to come alive, when we go beyond our own tiny program. Hare Krishna. So for text number 142, I was going to see if Dana Mataji is available to read.
Unfortunately, Prabhu, I'm driving, so I can't. I'm so sorry.
Very good. Be safe. Don't drive and
Thank you.
philosophize. Okay. Panchatattva Prabhu, would you like to read another one?
Sure. Sure. It says 142. Se sarva vedya abhideyanam sadhana bhakti hoite hoi premera udgam. By practicing this regulated devotional service under the direction of the spiritual master, certainly one awakes his dormant love of Godhead. This process is called abhidheya. Purport. By the practice of devotional service, beginning with hearing and chanting, the impure heart of a conditioned soul is purified, and thus he can understand his eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That eternal relationship is described by Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Jiver Swarup Hoy Krishner Nityadas. The living entity is an eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When one is convinced about this relationship, which is called sambandha, he then acts accordingly. This or that is called abhidheya. The next step is prayojana siddhi, or fulfillment of the ultimate goal of one's life. If one can understand his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and act accordingly, automatically his mission in life is fulfilled. The Mayavadi philosophers miss even the first stage in self-realization because they have no conception of God's being personal. He is the master of all, and he is the only person who can accept the service of all living entities. But since this knowledge is lacking in Mayavad philosophy, Mayavadis do not have knowledge even of their relationship with God. They wrongly think that everyone is God or that everyone is equal to God. Therefore, since the real position of the living entity is not clear to them, how can they advance further? Although they are very much puffed up at being liberated, Mayavadi philosophers very shortly fall down again to material activities due to their neglecting the lotus feet of the Lord. That is called patantyadaha. Ye ye rivendaksha vimuktamaninas tvayastabhavad avashuddha buddhayaha aruhya krichrena parang patang aruhya krichrena parang padang tata patantyadho nadrita yushmad angrayaha. Bhagavatam 10:2-32. Here it is said that persons who think themselves liberated but do not execute devotional service, not knowing their relationship with the Lord, are certainly misled. One must know his relationship with the Lord and act accordingly. Then the fulfillment of his life's mission will be possible. Om Jnana Timrandasya Giranjana Salakaya Chakshurumanitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sambandha Abhidheya Prayojana. So Lord Chaitanya is explaining to his audience, the Mayavadi sannyasis, that they have to practice this regulated devotional service under the direction of the spiritual master, and that the result will be an awakening of one's dormant love of Godhead. And that's process is called abhideya, the starting stage, the beginning stage, the first step. We have to know what our relationship is. If you don't know what your relationship is, there's no way to act upon it. And that's what's missing in the impersonalistic culture of knowledge of the absolute truth as practiced by the Mayavadi sannyasis and philosophers. Prabhupada says in the purport very clearly, they miss even the first stage in self-realization because they have no conception of God's being personal. That's a problem, a big problem. And as I mentioned before, it's a problem intensified by the practice of denying the personal feature of the absolute truth, denying the personal features of the personal activities of the absolute truth, denying relationships with the absolute truth. This systematic process of denialism makes it very difficult to come to the other side of such practice, because you become steeped in that culture of negation. And here we see that Lord Chaitanya is curing the disease of these souls, just as we are at the lotus feet of our spiritual master, begging to be cured of that disease. Through their hearing. They're hearing from the personality of Godhead, who is presenting himself in Kali Yuga as a devotee, and who's acting right here and now in the pages of the 7th chapter of Adi Lila as spiritual master to these very, very fortunate souls, and explaining both the defeat of Sankaracharya's commentary on the Vedanta Sutra and his interpretation of Vedic knowledge, as well as a positive explanation, direct explanation of the Vedas, the Vedanta Sutra, and all their corollaries, so that they can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his personal feature. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Maharaj, we'd love to hear from you. Would you like to address some of these points?
They've been nicely covered. Abhideya means relationship. That's the beginning. We establish a relationship, then there are dealings, then there's love. But they don't get it even as far as the relationship. Because the Prabhupada said, what is it? I think he said bhakti means two, Krishna and you. So without Krishna and you, there's no relationship. If I'm Krishna, then there's no relationship. If everyone's Krishna, there's no relationship. We're all one. All one means no relationship. So they don't even get to first base, as we say. They don't get to the even first step. No relationship. So the neophyte devotees are far more advanced than the Mayavadi philosophers, because they have the understanding there has to be some relationship. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Praveen Krishna Prabhu presents an argument. This purport makes it clearly evident that when Prabhupada mentions the Patantyadaha verse, he refers to these Mayavadi sannyasis who think themselves liberated. Their falling is their engagement in the material activities. not those who merge into Brahman, since one can never fall from the Brahmajyoti. The verse itself doesn't mention the Brahmajyoti.
I'm sorry, I missed that comment. I got knocked off here for a moment.
Okay. It's short. I'll read it again. He's presenting an argument. He says this purport makes it clearly evident that when Prabhupada mentions the Patantyadaha verse, he refers to these Mayavadi sannyasis who think themselves liberated. Their falling is their engagement in the material activities, not those who merge into Brahman, since one can never fall from the Brahmajyoti. The verse itself doesn't mention the Brahmajyoti.
That's your interpretation, but Tvayasta Bhavad Abhishuddha Buddhaya, the Paramparam Tataha, they attain the supreme. You're interpreting that it's Prabhupada's referring to those who have some philosophical understanding or something. But here's Parampadanta, even if they attain the highest station, the highest goal, Patantyada, they fall down again. So your thesis doesn't hold.
Thank you, Maharaj. We're at 7:52. We can have kirtan now, rather than get into another longish purport and discussion, I think. I was going to see if Sucharudeva Prabhu would like to lead the closing kirtan this evening.
Yes.
Jai.
Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshtadarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gauram Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Ashtotar Satashi Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath, Shyama Kund Radha Kund, Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Mayi Ki Jai, Jamuna Mayi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Thank you so much, Suchara Deva Prabhu, for the kirtan. And thank you, Maharaj, for being with us yet again. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Akendra Prabhu, and thank you to all.
So, thank you, Gurudev.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you, Panchatattva. Hare Krishna.
Thank you to everyone for being here, for all your listening and contributions. Shri Caitanya Caritamrta Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srila Jayadvaita Maharaj Ki Jai.
Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai.
Jai.
Gaur Premanande.
Haribo. Haribo.
Hare